Process improvement work can easily focus narrowly on fixing problems. We all fall into that trap. It shapes our language, our activities, our mindset, and it can result in performance levels that are well short of optimal. Focusing on problems is understandable. They're right there, now. There's plenty of them. They do need to be fixed. And there are many opportunities to improve process performance well beyond fixing problems. Good performance is the basic expectation of any stakeholder. Sure, let's achieve good performance, but don't stop there. We know what good looks like. What would exceptional look like? Let's explore that a little more. Yes, we need to close performance gaps, but let's not let good be the enemy of exceptional. We don't want to just close those gaps. We want to create some as well. Now, let's be clear what I mean anyway by performance gaps. I think this is a useful way to think about it. We can have two different types of performance gap. We can have an opportunity gap and a problem gap. The opportunity is the opportunity to do something different in terms of how we execute the process, or to use the process in a different way, or an opportunity to involve different people in the process. Whatever the difference is, the innovation that we can bring to the process. And the problem gap is about current or emergent problems. So it's about performance of the process as it's currently operating. And that's largely going to be indicated by KPI target performance. So we need to be looking at both of these things, and it's a nice way to think about it like this. It works for me anyway. Perhaps it will for you. We have performance gaps. That's what we're looking for. We want to assess and we want to close. And there are two types of performance gap: opportunity gaps and problem gaps. You'll be familiar with the 5Ws plus H tool. It's the Swiss Army knife of analysis tools, isn't it? We use it in many different ways. When we're thinking about how to create these performance gaps for our processes, to think differently about it, what we're saying really is, who else or what else or where else or when else or why else or how else? You're ahead of me, I'm sure. 5W plus H plus else. I think it's a really simple tool, but a powerful one. Who else might be able to participate in this process? Who else might be able to benefit from the process? What else might this process be able to produce? Where else might it be used? Is there some difference about the time in which it's used or the frequency in which it's used? Is there something different about why different stakeholders might want to use this process? How else might this process be executed? So 5Ws plus H plus else, I think, is a powerful tool. It's a simple enough concept, but if you were to ask those 6 questions about your process, you might come up with some surprising performance gaps that you didn't know existed. So I want to walk us through just 3 examples here of where processes have developed. They've evolved over time, and they haven't stopped evolving. So let's start here with an airport. And this might be a classic case of saying, let's be careful what problem we're trying to solve here. There's an immediate problem, but perhaps we can step back and see a larger problem that could be solved. So if we think about the evolution of check-in, we know that it's not so long ago that there was a single option and it was a physical queue. And perhaps that still exists in many places, in smaller airports. But even there, we're starting to get more and more options. And I like to think that there was a process improvement project workshop going one time, and we're trying to get better performance out of the physical queue, keep the queue to a particular length and minimize the time people are queuing. And I'd like to think someone in that workshop said, why do we need people to check in? What if we just didn't need them to check in? They arrived and got on the plane. Why do we need the queue? Rather than try and improve the queue, why don't we just get rid of it? Well, that was probably not going to work. Maybe there's some good reasons. There's some events that need to happen, check-in. But that brings to mind, doesn't it, the whole idea of zero check-in. And we get a bit closer to that. We've got self-check, we've got online check. Maybe biometrics will help, fingerprints or retinal scans, facial recognition, all of that sort of thing could easily be used for check-in purposes. Maybe also we could just say, hey, the system has detected that Roger's phone just arrived at the airport. And we know Roger's got a flight in a couple of hours. So it's, reasonable to think that phone's in his pocket. So we'll send a text message and we'll say, hi, Roger, welcome to your flight. You're in seat XYZ. I don't know if that's possible. But it starts to get us thinking about that way, doesn't it? Of saying not how we get for a shorter queue, but how do we get to zero queue? How do we just remove that entirely? And an efficient queue thought process is not going to get us to zero queue. That's not part of the whole mindset of saying, let's make the queue more efficient. And maybe we can start thinking differently about the real problem we're trying to fix here. If you own an airport, you're taking lots of money from parking and from retail outlet rents. And those people that are paying you money in the retail don't want to see travellers queued up to check in. Maybe what we need to start thinking about is that the real issue here is not how travellers are spending their time, but how they're spending their money. We want them to not be standing around in any kind of queue where they can't have the opportunity to spend money. So that's a very different mindset, isn't it? To, how do we get people to queue up nicely, to how do we get them not to queue at all? And the whole point of not queuing is that we want them to be out there doing little retail therapy and supporting the people that are paying rent to us. Here's another example. Let's think about recruitment. We do this all the time, don't we? So imagine we've got some position we want to fill, and we go through all the usuals of advertising, interviewing, shortlisting, and we pick the final candidate, ideal person. We make a job offer. Out of the 50 responses we had, the 50 resumes we've got, one of them's a clear winner, and we make the offer and she accepts the job. Job done? Yeah, work well. We got the perfect person for the job. Now, we also, though, what else do we have? We've got 49 resumes of people who are looking for a new job. Now, of course, we need to be careful. That's personal data. We can't just publish it. There's all sorts of rules about that, as there should be. But they send it to us, so at least in our organisation, we've got 49 resumes of people looking for a job. Now, we may not be able to do anything with it immediately, but maybe it can go into some sort of tracking system. What we don't need to do is just assume that that's waste, that we just discard those 49 resumes. Maybe over time we'd end up with quite a few resumes, and maybe we don't need to go out the advertising route anymore. We've even interviewed some of these people, so we've got some good additional data on them. So maybe that's not waste. Maybe we should be thinking about keeping those resumes, maybe even tracking those people if we think they might be worthwhile in the future. So, that's a whole new way, a whole new value we can get out of that recruitment process. Let's have a think finally about Uber and various other services of a similar nature. This would apply as well, of course. So we know that Uber originally obviously was a ride-sharing service, but it's a lot more than that these days. It's a kind of go anywhere, get anything kind of service, because it'll pick up and deliver food and packages and medicine and pet supplies, and it does partnerships with pharmacy chains to do vaccine services these days. Did you know that there's some trials going on where you can book a rental car via Uber? Now, I don't mean an Uber car. I mean an Avis or a Budget or a Hertz car. You can book that and it will be delivered and collected by Uber right to you. And all of that's happening in the app. You can also in some places now reserve a particular car and driver. You've got a favourite driver, so you reserve them. Airport collection service now in many large airports, where it's not just that there's an Uber there, but they're tracking the flight. They're guaranteeing you'll be picked up. Uber's trialling the ability for a traveller to pay by the hour, not by the trip. I've got a bunch of things to do and I need a car for 3 hours. Okay, we can do that. And if we're buying and selling and delivering and doing all of these things, now we've got a membership of people who are doing all of these transactions, and we can deliver some more value for them and us and our partners by doing some kind of savings deals. If you want us to deliver this particular product to you, sure, and if you get it from this outlet, you'll get it at a cheaper price. And all of this is happening in the app. And maybe now we could also say you could subscribe. You could be an Uber subscriber and pay an annual or monthly, quarterly fee or something. And now there's no delivery charge. So this is all changing, isn't it? This is a long way from being a cheap alternative to a taxi. And what might happen next? Who knows? But we start out here with an opportunity in the marketplace to solve a problem for travellers, to provide an equivalent service, rideshare service, a better service than taxis, and perhaps at a cheaper price. But now it's gone well beyond that. And it won't have stopped yet either. So let's try and summarise all of that. It's about creating performance gaps. Sure, we've got to fill them. We've got to solve the problems, but we need to think about those opportunities and think about all sorts of different ways in which we can use the process, and we can put the process to good use. What else can we do? And we've got to look for those things. They won't just pop up very often and announce themselves. We need to search. We need to be actively doing that. And we need to be thinking about what problem are we trying to solve. Maybe we need to reframe the problem sometimes to give us to uncover the opportunity, but all the time mining for those opportunities. 5 W's plus H plus else. And abstracting ourselves from the immediate to say, okay, what is happening here? We're not just running a taxi service. What we've got is the ability to deliver anything from anywhere to anywhere else. And that's a very different concept. So if we're thinking like that, if we're looking for those opportunities, if we're looking to create performance gaps as well as close them, now we've just ramped up the whole process improvement world by several orders of magnitude, perhaps. And the whole purpose of advanced process management, of course, is to do improved process improvement. And that's the purpose of process-based management.